Chapter 20, A Nothing Day. Having just returned to school, Manny found it strange to be back outside again. He had returned just in time to have his class line up and be dismissed to the cafeteria. Although he brought his lunch along with him, he did not feel like eating. A strange tumult made him feel like he had feasted earlier. He felt full and sleepy. He traded his sandwich for a juice pouch that neither he nor his classmate particularly liked much. But that, along with his own box of apple juice, helped him feel better. He ate his pack of peanut butter crackers between drinks and was asked by one classmate what he had done that morning after being called from class. The attention of two boys and a girl across the table fell on him as he answered. He was honest and regaled the adventure from when he was pulled from class up until he reached the hospital, skipping over the lesson regarding human procreation Abuelos had thrown at him in his recanting. The girl had wide eyes when he mentioned that his mother was pregnant. One of the boys mumbled an honest yet timid congratulation, while another asked if he knew if it would be a boy or a girl. Manny said he didn't know, but he was looking forward to being a big brother. The conversation switched quickly from focus on him, and he liked that the others were willing to talk with him so readily about their siblings, except one who said he didn't have any brothers or sisters yet. Manny could tell that the boy was slightly envious, and it made Manny feel grateful for his situation. It was as though he could see the perspective of another to understand how lovely his own experience could be. But it was more than that. His own turbulent crisis, his emotional episode, his worries were all put in place as just being a component of this group of kids he was a part of. He suddenly was aware that what he knew of himself was the same that three others knew of themselves, not exactly the same, because they were all different, but similar in how much importance they thought what they each thought was important. It seemed confusing, but only because the words he had did not lay out the idea clearly. A light went on in his head. "What reading did I miss in class?" he asked, and all four looked back to him. He realized that it was out of the natural course of the conversation as it had developed. "Because I left during the reading part," he added. "Well, he read about the Chinese cat, but then he introduced the Tapper twins book that we are supposed to read on our own," one of the boys said. "Independent reading," the girl said. "We read a chapter at home and keep a journal about what we think about it each night," she explained. "But he doesn't really check the journals," added one of the other boys. "You could write anything as long as he sees that there's words on the page, and you will get marked with a check for it." "You don't really just write anything, do you?" the first boy asked. "Sometimes I do read the chapter, but sometimes I want to write something other than the assignment about the book," he answered. "What do you write?" Manny asked. "For the first book of this year, I sometimes would write a story about this ship that carries a bunch of pirates from way back in the past through a portal that brings them to our time. And when they attack a cruise ship, everyone on board thinks it's a make-believe adventure that the cruise ship set up for them as a show," he said as Manny masticated the last of crackers. "Sounds cool," Manny said. Flecks of cracker crumbs flew from his lips, and he sheepishly covered his mouth in a gesture of humble apology. "It's okay," the boy said, as the boy next to him laughed. "But why would you write your own story?" the girl asked with an incredulous tone. The boy looked at her. "Because I want to," "That's why," he said plainly. "You're gonna get in trouble for that," she said with a tone meant to rattle him. "Why would I get in trouble?" the boy challenged. "Because you should be doing the work you are given for a grade," she replied. "If he catches you doing that, he's going to give you a bad grade." "No," the boy said with uncertainty ringing in his voice. "Maybe he will give me a good grade for being creative." She clearly had not imagined that as a possibility. "But how does he know you did the reading?" "How does he know anyone does the reading?" he responded, building up momentum for his point of view. "You think he reads every single journal from every student? He just wants to make sure we are writing something." The girl leaned on the table as she understood what he was saying. "Maybe that's why we're reading and then writing, just to practice writing. And what if he does read each one and gave me a good grade even when he saw I've been writing my own story?" He looked at Manny. "He doesn't do that." He looked back to the girl. "But he might." "I still think you're going to get in trouble," she said, before the lunchroom monitor raised a hand behind her to address the students, making the roar of their voices quieter upon seeing the gesture. "It would be worth it to write the way I want to," he said to her and turned to Manny. "I'm Bennett, by the way." "Manny," he responded and shook Bennett's hand while getting shushed by the girl from across the table. The voices in the room came down and silence permeated. The lunch monitor spoke to the room, giving instructions as to how they would dismiss table by table to the schoolyard for recess. Manny threw out his brown paper bag that he had used to carry his lunch and waited at the table for the monitor to deem his table quiet enough to be dismissed. When the signal was given, the kids rose and made their way to the door leading to the courtyard, where they started running in groups familiar with each other. Bennett asked Manny if he wanted to play Infection, a game like tag, where the person who is it tags someone and that person becomes it also. Manny noticed a figure beyond the fence of the courtyard and politely told Bennett no, he was tired from the morning. Despite further pressing, Manny turned down the offer, but Bennett was happy to be told, maybe tomorrow. At that point, it dawned on Manny how his day was nothing in terms of school so far. It also seemed strange that he was once again outside, as though the school was totally oblivious to how much time he had spent outside already today. He looked up to the open sky and felt the breeze picking up. Squinting his eyes, he held his hand to his brow. The figure beyond the fence was pushing away from the car it had been leaning on. The car was familiar to him, and he started walking toward the fence. The figure converged on the same spot as him, and Manny verified it was his father before they were in shouting distance of each other. Fearing the worst, Manny slowed as he walked. His father called his name. Manny responded by asking if his mother was okay. His father was stopped in his tracks and understood what Manny must be thinking. He then quickly reassured his son that she was well. She was fine, and he was going to pick her up from the hospital tonight. He noticed the relief that came into Manny's face, and he apologized for not telling him sooner. Once that was clear, his father explained why he was here and what events he was hopeful of. The truth is that he was not well prepared for the arrival of the baby, and he felt worse and worse because not only are babies expensive to care for, But now he knew that the cost of the hospital care would be extraordinarily high in comparison to what it was when Manny was born, and the cost of the prenatal care for his mother was mounting up bills that he might never be able to pay. But when he was talking with Abuelo about it at the hospital, the nurse had heard and took them aside. He told Manny that she had offered the chance to help him find work. When he explained that he worked for his father doing grounds maintenance, she lit up with an idea. She had coordinated a contract for him to handle the grounds of an apartment complex to the north, and he was on his way up there now to meet with the owner and managers. She told him a bid that would guarantee him the contract, and it was more than they would make combined with he, Manny, and Mother working the fields. If things went well there, the contract could be extended and other contracts could come along. This was not going to solve the problem entirely, and it would bring other changes, but it would help him get into a position where he could pay off the hospital bills over the course of time. Clearly understanding how important this was, Manny said that was great news, but asked what kind of changes would it bring. His father looked out to the other kids playing and explained how he felt bad for what may occur, but he really wanted Manny to know that it is not something he takes lightly, that he and their mother might need to move north to be closer to the property. But what about Abuelos? They would stay at home, but Abuelo would allow him to take some of the equipment which he would need for the contract. Abuelos would visit often, but this would be how he and Manny and Mama would start their own home. Manny considered how they seemed to be moving up, and laughed to himself before looking back to the courtyard where Bennett and all the other kids were immersed in a game of infection tag. He thought of how much today hurt, and how much he learned even though he was barely in school. He thought about how it seemed to be a day when he was not able to find any kind of stability, and even after his awakening experience with the woman after trying to work at the construction site, he had little to hold to that was not changing always. Thinking about his determination earlier to work, and now his decision to be in school, not even his thoughts remained the same. If he was changing as well as all around him, then he found comfort in knowing that he could at least control how he would change. He had a deep, resounding thought that he might not remember much of what he lives, what he thinks, and what he does. He wondered if he would remember Bennett once he and his parents moved north. He would go to a different school and might not ever see Bennett again. But did it really matter to him? Did it really matter to Bennett? For the first time, he knew that he was young and felt that it was okay for him to feel young. It was strange to have that understanding, but he somehow knew that it was something just for him to experience, and he would not need to tell his father about what he had just learned. Manny told his father that he would very much like that they have their own home. When told it will mean going to a different school again, Manny shrugged and said he made one friend in the little time today he was at this school, so he will make new friends at the next school. His father crouched down to be on his level. He promised that this would be the last move for a long time, that he will make sure Manny has one place with his mother and father and the new baby, Manny could see his father was nervous and excited about this, and Manny felt it with him. Yet the prospect of a new school was where his imagination stayed. He wondered if he would meet someone like Bennett at his next school. He wondered if he would remember Bennett in years to come. He hoped that whomever he became friends with at his new school would be someone he could remember always.